остановиться, потому что сейчас без паузы у нас продолжится выступление нашего keynote-спикера. Выступление будет на английском языке. Давайте я его представлю и попрошу вас поприветствовать его аплодисментами. Это генеральный директор и председатель компании глобальный, мистер Сухас Гопинат. Давайте поаплодируем ему. Сухас, please, follow me.
So, I thank RBC and as well as our partners from GVA to invite me to speak here. And it's been an honor to be here at Sochi. So, I'll be speaking. Of course, apart from building a company at the age of 14, I also play a role with the Indian government to advise Prime Minister's Office as part of the National Supervisory Committee on Incubation, Innovation, Technology and Entrepreneurship. So, of building a company at the age of 14 from an internet cafe of having on a computer at home and taking the company as a multi-million dollar company operating about 14 countries today. It's been I've seen how important it is for economic development of the region where I come from, and of course India as a country as a whole, especially the fact that if entrepreneurship is encouraged in universities or in schools, we've seen visible, tangible impact across the country. I mean, it could be, for example, the fact that the Prime Minister's vision in India is to see if we could eradicate unemployment, if it could help us in amplifying innovation, having indigenous innovation that will come from India, and as well as to see that how could India become an innovation partner, because for several years the West used to perceive India as an outsourcing hub. So all the back office all those monotonous jobs used to be outsourced to India. But now it's very impressive to see that India is coming out as an innovation hub, where we've got almost in the last 2 years itself, we've got about $15 billion companies in India that has come out of these some of the policies that we've been speaking about. So so I'll actually walk you through some of the interesting policies that we have, and the most important is, why do we need to take our startups outside of India, right? So it's something that yesterday in one of the panel discussions I was also leading, where we realized that with India and as well as with Russia, we have some similarities where for several years we've been building innovations in a cocoon, and the aspirations was very low. So why do we need to go international when the domestic market consumption is quite high? Is it really important for us to do co-innovation? Is it very important for local companies or innovators or startups to partner with their counterparts outside of the country? So when these countries when these points were actually put up across from our own policymakers and as well as from stakeholders within India, of course we realize that it's much more than of course making more money, but it's to see in case if we could minimize the fact that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and how do you amplify innovation. That is, for example, in advanced slides I will be walking you through one of the initiatives that we did a few weeks back with Russia, with a partner from GVA, where we brought 10 Indian startups to Russia for the first time, and we wanted these 10 startups to actually partner with their counterparts, so that if at all they could do an incremental innovation, and if at all the Indian startup thinks that, okay, all this while I was building this, which is non-core to my company, so the best is to partner with one of the Russian startups so that they could actually be able to effectively collaborate. So, so with this whole idea, I want you to walk you through the Indian startup ecosystem. So, with India, I would say over the last 5 years, it's been it was in the 15th position as far as the startups was concerned, because India was known for outsourcing jobs, but all of a sudden it's taken the position of we hope we could be second in terms of the innovation ecosystem and startup ecosystem in the world, but at the moment we hold the third position. It's about until date we've got the infusion. It's old data of 5 billion. Until date we've got about $7 billion of funding that's happened in the startups until date. And in India, at an average, about 8 startups are launching their products every week. So approximately we've got 8 startups that opens up every week in India. And the fact that it's obvious, it's no-brainer that in India the population has been a significant advantage to us of about 1.2 billion Indians, and about the fact that about 800 millions of Indians use phones, and about 200 millions of Indians have smartphones with mobile internet. So it's a lot easier for these startups and innovations to build solutions for a populous country like India. But at the same time, for us from policy perspective, the vision is how do you build a collaborative ecosystem? How do you build a bridge with countries like Russia so that such innovations would not stay only for India, but how do you help them to scale, of course, outside of India as well? So some of the initiatives that we've launched is, which the Prime Minister of India has launched very recently after he took over the office, was Startup India. He launched Make in India, he launched Digital India, as well as Skill India. So the whole idea is it comes from the top boss of the country, where he tells that, okay, we want to build a movement in India, saying that, okay, we want students in every villages to actually start up, and we will do everything that's possible for a student or for a youth if he has an idea, so that he can take action on their ideas. And we are making India as well, because in India for several years we had the perception that if at all the product had made in India as a tag, it's considered as substandard, or it's considered as, okay, it's not cool. We need something which says that it's made in USA or it's made in some other country, because for several years Indians were not valuing the home product, the indigenous product that used to come. So it was very important for us to change the perception, because it's easier for you to say startups should come from India, but if people are not buying those local products itself, it's very hard for these products to scale. So that's exactly why we also launched this campaign called as Make in India and Make it for the World. So the whole idea was how do we encourage and how do we do a massive PR campaign across India, so that so people could take the fact that, okay, I'll have to take the pride when I'm saying that the product is made in India or is designed in India. So similar to the fact that how Switzerland has had this title for several years, that, okay, if it's made in Swiss, it's considered to be cool. That's exactly was the whole vision for Make in India campaign as well, where we started to encourage people to manufacture within India, and as well as to buy, of course, products which were either fabricated in India or was designed in India. So similarly, it was also very important to skill the Indians, because significant unemployment was a huge issue. So how do you upskill the people in India? How do you build? How do you offer jobs to those eligible unemployed youth, and how do you make them more employable? And we had a Digital India initiative as well, where we wanted to ensure that up to the last mile in the villages, there were high-speed internet connectivity, so startups could actually start building solutions on the infrastructure that was built, where we built high-speed internet gateways, you build internet facilities in railway stations across India, so that the whole idea is if the infrastructure is there, you could encourage more and more local companies to build solutions around them for citizen services or for marketplaces, or it could be various other consumer internet initiatives that we could launch. So it's probably I've seen the Prime Minister meeting more startup entrepreneurs than any Prime Minister in the history who's met the business or Fortune 500 CEOs or the business community. So it could be from Alibaba, Jack Ma to Mark Zuckerberg, everyone. The Prime Minister wanted to do an outreach campaign to these startup ecosystems to see how could how could startup be in every student's blood? At least if he doesn't start a company, at least he should at least have one thought that, okay, I need to focus and I need to explore an opportunity in that direction. So I'll walk you through some of the very interesting policies that we've launched very recently in India. And the first thing is, if at all in India, startup is recognized by an incubator. So what we did was, we've got about 180 incubators in India that's been funded by Indian government. It's like the RBC counterpart for India, which is called NSTDB. So what we did was, the incubators that were being recognized by us, and if these incubators are recognizing any startup or any company as a startup, they are exempted from income tax for the first 3 years, so they don't have to pay tax. And they do not have to pay significant duties on customs or imports. And we also launched a scheme called SIPP, which means that any startup that wants to apply for a patent, it's completely subsidized. So if the startup wants to do a patent in India or outside of India, we started to subsidize that. We started to subsidize on the IP protection fees. And something very interesting that we did was, we had all these HNIs in India, and since the real estate market in India was tanked, so all these wealthy Indians wanted to look for new avenues to invest in. And when they invest into land or when they invest into manufacturing unit, they were exempted from capital gain tax or the return that comes. So one of the policies that we did was, so any wealthy individual or HNI, if he or she wants to invest into a startup, they are exempted from the capital gain tax, which means that if I invest in a startup and I make, let's say, 5 times returns on it, I don't have to pay capital gain tax on those returns, as far as I'm going to reinvest that into another startup. And and the incubators were empowered to recognize these startups, and the incubators in India were exempted from service tax, which was very important because if incubators were offering co-working spaces, were offering some additional facilities to these incubating companies, or if the incubating companies or the startups wanted to give services to someone else, we made them exempt from service tax for first 3 years, so the startups in India had a competitive edge compared to the large companies. So imagine if a startup is bidding for a project with if it's competing with a large company, and the startup could tell that, okay, if you give the project to me, you don't have to pay tax on the services, which is equivalent to VAT or which is equivalent to GST. So they didn't have to pay any service tax on if you procure services from startups. And we did something very interesting is, of course, as you know, in India, to an extent, we did have corruption. So we did have some harassment from the labor laws, saying that, okay, we want to inspect your office, we want to make sure that you are compliant with the labor law. We did something very interesting, because first-time startup entrepreneurs, especially students, were very afraid to hire people, because if at all they would file harassment suits against them, or if there are issues of non-compliance on labor laws. Something that we did was, for the first 3 years, startups are exempted from any inspection from the labor laws, which means that as far as they are self-assessing themselves, and the startups had to self-certify the compliance on their own part. So, which means that from Indian government, we didn't send any inspectors to inspect these companies, which was building kind of fear factor on these companies. So it was like building a highway path for these startups to say, okay, for first 3 years, as far as you want to play with your idea, we're going to encourage with you, and we will not harass you as far as the compliance is concerned. Of course, as far as they are non-polluting or anything, because startups still have to follow the environment laws in case if they are into manufacturing. But apart from it, we were able to exempt them at least from the labor laws. So another thing that we did very interesting was, the Indian government spends almost about $16 billion on the IT procurement itself. So maybe they procured hardware, software, or they could want to procure mobile apps for the citizen services. So for the first time, Indian government told that we will not procure from large companies or corporations, but we'll start procuring from startups. So which was a very bold move. So startups were not allowed to bid for federal or state government projects because they didn't have historical experiences. So it's the first time startups were saying that, okay, if you're recognized as a startup by your incubator in your university, you are allowed to bid to any of the projects, and we will not ask you for your historical experience that was required as far as the quality standards was met.
Just a question from the previous slide, Andrei Zotov. What is the mechanism of recognition? You mentioned recognized incubator. You mentioned recognized startup. Who is making the recognition?
It's an incubator.
The incubator for the startup, and who recognizes the incubator?
Андрей, можно микрофон, чтобы переводчики слышали вас?
Простите, я не заметил. So who is the recognition body for the incubator then?
It is a committee where I am part of, which is called the National Expert Advisory Committee. So for example, if you are a university in India, you will have to make a presentation to our committee saying that, hey, I want to start an incubator in Mumbai, and I want to focus on medtech, nanotechnology, or any of the areas. We will look at your historical records, the expertise of the incubator CEOs and the university, and we recognize you as incubator.
That makes you a non-government body.
That makes you?
Non-government. So you are a self-regulating organization then, correct?
Yeah, the National Expert Advisory Committee is like a federal regulator which recognizes the incubator and which also finances the incubator.
Okay, now thank you.
So it's two, yeah. So if I walk you through the policy, probably you could better understand that. So it's earlier what we used to do was we made startups to be recognized by the ministry, which was really bad because you don't have so many people in the ministry. And imagine startups applying to the ministry and following up, we don't have the bandwidth. So it's the reason we decentralized to make incubators be the authority to say, okay, if this startup has to be recognized as a startup, because you do not want a large corporation to take the benefits of this. So it's a very interesting thing that we launched, of course, very recently, is that the budget that was set up for building the whole startup ecosystem was approximately $2 billion. And the whole idea was how do you deploy, of course, various schemes to help incubators. So one of the areas that we focused on is to finance approximately $3 million for any university to start an incubator in their school. So it could be a university, or it's a college, or it's a non-profit institution that's focusing on innovation. So they were allowed to start an incubator, and we used to finance them for approximately $3 million. And if the same incubator or the existing incubators would say, hey, I've got an excellent record for the last 5 years, and I've had amazing success stories. Now I want to upgrade my incubator as a center of excellence, or COE. So we used to upgrade the fund from approximately $3 million to it's approximately $10 million, so that they could have a massive space of about 50,000 square feet to 100,000 square feet of incubation space. And we also started to fund the IITs in India, which is Indian Institute of Technologies, which is like the Ivy League engineering schools in India, to start setting up research parks and science parks, where we started to fund them almost about approximately about $50 million, so that they could set up these research parks in the country. And another initiative which I personally was very passionate of is, as a student, when I built a company, and when I used to see my friends who didn't want to start companies, I felt that the biggest barrier that they used to face was the fact that for higher education in India, they have to take education loans from the bank. And they were, so even though they had amazing killer ideas, they never wanted to start a company because they're from non-business family, they may not have the financial support to pay back the loans, and they were forced to take up a 9-to-5 job, and all their ideas and innovation went to the back burner. So one of the initiatives that we did was we made these incubators to offer fellowship to the students whom they would incubate, which means that if a student from the university is incubated in their incubator, they get a fellowship of approximately $1,000 per month. So, which is as good as a fresh graduate from India. Is the pay that he gets is about $800. So he's getting slightly much above than his peers, and at least for a year he's getting this stipend or a fellowship from his university, so that at least for a year we're going to tell him that, hey, we want you to play with your ideas for a year. If it works, great. If it's not, you can always take up a job. But we do not want students to part their ideas with the fear that he will not have a financial security, he may not be able to pay back his loans, and he may not have the financial support from his parents. So I still remember when I was building a company, and when I told my mom that I want to be like Bill Gates, I want to leave my school, the first thing she told us, he's born in the US, you're born in India, and his horoscope is different and your horoscope is different. He's born in a very lucky time and you are in India, so you may not have that kind of a privileged ecosystem where you could scale companies, and we are from a middle class family, so we're dependent on you in your future. So especially from middle class families, it was very, very important that when parents are investing on the students, so they expect some kind of, okay, at least when in their old age, the kids are able to take care of as like in Indian culture. So the fellowship was a huge impact as far as the stereotype thinking is concerned. We started to get the parents of these student entrepreneurs having to remove the barrier, because in India, because of the culture, the family was one of the biggest barrier for a student not to start a company, and we were able to remove with this very small initiative. I mean, off the record, probably about the fellowship is probably a fraction of the budget that we are speaking about of anything else in the scheme, but extremely impactful for students to have the confidence to actually start. So, and another initiative that we launched was we launched this Grand Challenge programs, where we thought across regions in India, it could be in smaller towns, in villages, we started to have this hackathons, and we could have the challenges. And the good part is, we asked the incubators to partner with the local media, so that we get free PR or the earned PR for the incubator, and they can make enough noise around the region so that they could source the ideas. And the whole idea is, we used to give the money to these incubators to say, hey, the winners could be incubated in your incubator, and they could also have the prize money as well. So we started to identify the grand challenges that were impactful for those regions. It was not like all India level where it's not region specific, it was not too broad, but we wanted to verticalize it, and we wanted to select those challenges or problem areas that is very specific to the region. So for example, in Mysore as a region that's in south of India, they focus on silk, and the silk weavers had some kind of problems that they wanted to use technology, and the technology adoption was very low. So we thought, okay, is there any way we could have a grand challenge to help the silk weavers, where startups would come up with ideas to empower these silk weavers. And another fund that we launched was prototyping fund called as Prayas, which means that if any student who does not want to start a company, but he has an idea and he wants to take action on the idea, so we started to help these incubators to set up maker labs and tinkering labs across the schools. So the Prime Minister's vision was not necessarily ideas that should come only from the universities, but it could also come from the schools. So across the high schools in India, we started to set up about 500 maker labs. And the whole idea of the maker labs is we could at least make these kids to have a hands-on experience about building something that's more tangible. And as well as the universities were also empowered to have this prototyping fund, which means that if a student has an idea and it's still in the presentation stage and he wants to build a prototype, we used to give him approximately $20,000 for him to build a prototype. And we also started to upgrade the universities to Center for Excellence, and we also started to finance the incubators to start accelerator programs, focus on women, focusing on medtech, or focusing on other areas which are very interesting. So incubators were also empowered to run events and programs. So something interestingly which we did off recently with, we started with Russia actually, is to build startup corridors. So the whole idea is we did not want the innovation ecosystem in India to operate out of isolation where we're not collaborating. And we realized that the obvious collaboration with startups which would do without any kind of policies is they would always look up to the companies that's in Silicon Valley. But and we knew that the tangible innovation and impactful innovations would not necessarily come from the valley, but it would come across the world. So we thought we could start with Russia, where the whole idea is there any way India and also Russia could set up a startup corridor and an innovation bridge, and if this succeeds, if we could replicate this of course in other cities and across markets. And within India as well, we realized that like every incubator in India that we started to fund were operating in isolation. They did not want to partner with each other. They felt that, okay, the other incubators like my competitors, why do I have to share my best practices to them? And yesterday we also saw this award ceremony here, so I could imagine that competitive spirit is very important, and every incubator wants to become the best in their country, but it's also very important that they don't operate in isolation, because it's very important for these incubators to share their best practices that's required, and to understand if there are any innovations that's coming out of these incubators, how do these incubators be able to share the innovation across other incubators, so that if someone else is looking in the same area, instead of the other incubating companies reinventing the wheel, they could actually piggyback on an existing innovation that's already happened in other innovation ecosystems. So the whole idea is we started to build the startup corridors within India as well, so that if at all there's an incubator in Mumbai that wants to partner with an incubator, maybe Delhi for example, they could actually be able to partner, they could actually share the incubators that's coming, they are able to share the pipeline, they could also be able to open up their network. So the whole idea is, how are we able to optimally use the resources that we've already there, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and access to a larger talent pool. And exactly the similar thing is when we realize that when R&D is localized, it's also very hard for these incubating companies to scale up, because they are again operating in a they may not understand the problems that would exist in other city within India, because India as a country is like a Europe. Like we have about 25 languages, we have every state has its own laws. So a startup out of Mumbai thinks that okay, he's built it in India, he could work across India. It's not the case. So it's very important that if they have a collaborative network, it's much easier. So with the startup corridor, something that we also suggested is we can also build something like a hot desk, which means that if an incubating company of a University of Mumbai, for example, or IIT Bombay it is incubated in IIT Bombay and wants to go to Bangalore, for example, they will have a partner incubator that would host them when they want to move there. So it's like, so imagine a scenario where the entire India is like a co-working space for the incubators, so they could actually be able to move around the country. They do not have to worry about office spaces, they do not have to worry about access to mentor network or investors network. And and of course the corridors were helping us to understand the cultural barriers, overcome that, and also understand the fact that it's much easier for them to localize it, understand the local laws in much easier way, and of course you're able to understand failures that's happened in incubators or incubating companies in those regions. Something we also did with the United States was we also set up an Indo-US endowment fund, which means that if there is a common problem which two research scholars or two students or an innovator would identify that could be used in India as well as the US. And as far as they have a collaborative partner in the United States, they both could partner together and they could access this Indo-US endowment fund. So that such an innovation could be used in both the countries. And a similar model has been proposed with Russia, so that we can set up an endowment fund, so that if there is an innovator in India who would want to partner with his counterpart in Russia, they both could actually partner and build an innovation that could be used in both the countries. And something very interesting that we also did was we also started to set up demo days for these startups with corporates and with policymakers, so they're able to pitch their ideas to them. So, and of course, we've also looked at soft landing support, which we are also looking to build actually with Russia. So the whole idea is having access to co-working space, local mentorship, having access to leads and having access to network. We realized that soft landing support was very important for startups to go international. So it had excellent impact because a startup has an amazing innovation, but they do not know how to scale up. If a startup wants to aspire to become a Fortune 500 company or wants to go international, we realized that having soft landing supports across the world for these incubating startups was extremely important. So we would like to summarize this. I'll take a minute, Zamir, on IRBA, and we can conclude this. So in the month of September, we started a program called it's called as Indo-Russia Bridge for Innovations, where we partnered with the GVA from Russia and the Indian government. The whole idea is, if at all we could partner with some of the innovation ecosystems and universities here. The whole idea is there any way an Indian startup could do a tech transfer to a startup which is in Russia or innovation ecosystem, or the other way around? So as I told, actually with India is a huge market, and it's also very important for some of the Russian innovators and startups to explore the market potential in India, especially after institutionalizing the IRBI, because the Russian startups and incubation ecosystem here could get access to a soft landing support. So which means that if a Russian company wants to go to India, it's much easier with the IRBA program. We've got Startup Connect, which means that startups could collaborate. We opened up programs of internships where universities could send their students to take up internships in Indian startups and the other way around. We also proposed to set up the joint grant challenges the similar way we did it with the US, so that we could solve the problems that's applicable to both the countries. The co-innovation soft landing support, and of course to set up a joint endowment fund. Hopefully we realize this by this year end. So market sector access, this is a bit complicated, so I'll just skip this for paucity of time. So yeah, this was the first delegation of about 10 startups that came to. First time they came to Russia, and out of 10 startups, it's very likely that at least 2 to 3 of them is very likely to have a business card that would have a Russian address, very likely. So it was a significant success for us. And we also had the RDC to sign an MOU with ISBA. ISBA is the association of all the incubators in India. 180 incubators have an association which has signed a MOU with RDC. So that the whole idea is that we could have mutual soft landing support and access to each other's ecosystem. So with this, thank you so much for hearing me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.